Hey, everybody, welcome back to Something to Complain About. This is A. I'm here with T, and we are celebrating 4 handfuls and a finger.
A big old middle finger.
Right?
So mean. People,
Episode
people,
21 is what we mean when we say that. Sorry. I don't know. We
people
might cut
are
that, we may
going,
not. I'm not sure.
people are going, who the hell are we listening to? I thought
People,
these were like
okay,
two.
but anybody saying that now should have been saying that a while back when we were before 4 handfuls or whatever. So, I mean, okay. We're going to take a 5-second break so T can catch her breath. We don't want her to choke
Again.
or something.
So, welcome to episode 21, also
Yes.
known as 4 handfuls and a middle finger.
There we go.
Because,
That should be the title. 4 handfuls and a middle finger.
you know, I love that you and I, we both have the humor of 12-year-olds. Like we have never outgrown our juvenile sense of humor.
I don't think we probably will at this point. I think we're kind of stuck with it. Well, we're fine with it. Everybody else is stuck with it.
Everyone else is stranded with it. Yeah.
That's all right.
Yeah. Yeah. My humor growth probably cut off about in 1992,
Sounds about right to me.
1991. Yeah. And it just never matured. Yeah.
Okay.
It's all right.
We don't need it to.
Okay. All right.
Nice.
So I have to tell you
Okay.
something it was kind of exciting for me.
Mhm.
I saw Little T earlier this week. And this next part is going to feel a little bit like a stab wound. But
Okay.
she said, so be prepared. She goes, I was tasked to watch a classic movie for one of my classes, and I chose Gremlins. And then right away she goes, oh, I'm sorry. And I go, no, that's okay. I go, it is a 40-year-old movie. And I said, because we talked about it on our podcast, and I don't think she listens to us because, I mean, we're old. She's 23. We're old. She doesn't want to listen to us old farts. But what was very interesting, is she had never seen it before.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was so fascinating to hear her talk about it from an experience of somebody walking in brand new. Like she kind of knew what it was about, but she had never watched it. And it was very interesting. She walked away with, she loved the puppetry because, the puppets. And she was like, nobody does puppets anymore. And I'm like, oh, I guess you're right. Everything's CGI now.
Mm-hmm.
And then she also spent quite a bit of time talking about how it was like she picked up on a lot of the 80s consumerism.
Oh,
like
okay.
dad is the inventor and he's inventing all these things that they have no purpose. They're redundant.
Sure.
And I guess I'd never really picked up that piece. I would just always, because all of his little inventions that they show, none of them work right. But when you think about it, it's like, it's all just non-essential stuff. So I thought that was very, very interesting. And then she said, it's not a Christmas movie. And I always thought it was a Christmas movie. She said
Yeah.
she said it felt like a Thanksgiving movie.
I didn't know that was a genre of movie.
I didn't either. But she said it's the build up to Christmas. That's why she kind of thought it was more of like a Thanksgiving, like things are building up towards Christmas. Which I guess makes sense because it doesn't happen on Christmas, does it? Or it happens right before?
I don't remember.
I
But
don't either.
I feel like that's when we watched it, and I feel like they were Gremlins with Santa hats.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it takes her, because Gizmo is a Christmas present.
That's what I thought. So to me,
So,
it's still a
so
Christmas movie.
yeah, me too. So then we
Nobody
got
makes
into
Thanksgiving moving. what's wrong with these Gen Zers? That's not a
I
thing.
don't know. So anyway, and I said, no, Gremlins is like, uh, uh, is a Christmas movie. I said, the movie up for debate is whether or not Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Because there's a huge debate. Is it a Christmas movie or is it a movie that just takes place during Christmas? And I watched Die Hard again last week and I was trying to decide, is it a Christmas movie or not? But you know what she said? She goes, I've never seen Die Hard.
Oh dear. Okay. I'm not really sure what to say to that. I mean,
Well,
if she's
she
gonna
never,
watch the classics, she might as well throw Die Hard in there. I mean, right?
well,
Like
that's what I mean. Like the Gremlins, Die Hard. Um,
National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
there we go. A Christmas Story.
Yeah, which is from the 50s or 60s.
No, it takes place like I think in the 50s, but it was film or it came out like what in the early 80s, like
That
in
sounds right.
83. But it takes place at an earlier time, I think. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
been like 100 years since I've seen that one. But no, so it was pretty interesting to hear a fresh perspective on such an old movie, and especially one that, you and I have talked about. We remember seeing it for the first time. We remember when it came out. We've both seen it multiple times since then. So it's not very often that you get somebody going, I just watched Gremlins for the first time.
Well, but also they're watching it in the context of this is a classic, right? Like,
Yeah, I
I don't
know.
think like even when I think of classics, I think of things that are still black and white.
Oh, yeah, like Casablanca,
Yeah.
From Here to Eternity, On the Waterfront. The
Yeah.
I think like her age, they would probably consider those maybe a step up from Primordial Ooze. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Maybe. I
That's
don't
the
know.
stab part. That's the part where we're getting stabbed, right? Where we're
Is
just
that
sort
the
of
part?
like, I don't know. Like the whole idea that Gremlins would be considered a classic makes me
But hey,
feel just slightly uncomfortable.
it's 40 years old, so it is a classic. I think what makes it feel impossible is that the existence of gremlins and our experience with gremlins, we've carried with us for the majority of our lives.
I mean, I suppose, but also like I think it's just also that and at least in my mind, right? Classics are the original movies, right? That were black and white that had some of those old actors in them. Well, to us, they were old. Now they're dead. I mean, like that group of people as they were first becoming films that were widely consumed, right? Like,
Right. But also, did you ever watch a silent movie? Because I've never willingly watched a silent movie. So, like, those were, when I think classics, and like when I think when growing up and my mom wanted to show us classics, they were movies from, I mean, we did go back to the late 30s because, Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind,
yeah,
What Happened One Night. But most of what she showed us were 50s.
sure.
You know, she didn't show us the, the silent movies. So, like to me, then those are like basically non existent. So when you think of it kind of that way, and then you think, okay, like with T, there's already one full generation between us,
Mhm.
then, and then for her, the classics would be like if she were my kid, she would have, I would have shown her movies from the 80s and maybe some of the 70s and the early 90s. from my childhood. So that would have been
I
classics
think
for her.
I think the difficulty is that we're defining classic by what the previous 2 generations grew up with. That's where I'm struggling. Instead of it being a defined period of time, right, where movies were made and those are the classics. And maybe that's partially because in my music brain, when we think of classical music, we think of stuff between a certain period of centuries, right? Like it doesn't matter how old you are or when you're born, we still think of that period as what we would consider classical. But movies apparently are a moving target because
You're
this
over
is
it.
where being stabbed in the head, like this whole idea that the movies that we grew up with could be classics. All that means is now we're also classics.
I wear
Deep breath.
articles of clothing that were in style, have gone out of style, and are now back in style, and it's the same piece of clothing.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I'm I'm okay with I'm okay with it. I'm mostly psyched that first of all she watched it and then she
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Yeah. Because, like, I mean, honestly, when you're used to the way movies are made now, and then you look back to the way movies were made then, we were super excited about those movies because the the animations or the not the sound effects, the what am I
What was
thinking of
that?
here?
It was all
What's
like
the word?
practical. It was all practical effects because, like all the
Yeah,
gremlins, they were like puppets.
yeah,
Those were people, with manipulating puppets, and um, so it was that amazement of what someone could create practically
right. And
versus
now
using,
you look at it and you're
yeah,
like, holy crap, that was almost primordial, right? Like compared to what can happen now digitally. Right, like, even if you look at some of the animated cartoons that were happening when we were even just in our first few years of university, and you look at them
right.
now and you're like, "Holy crap." The visual effects are significantly like, obviously, there you can tell the difference. You kind of know the period just when the movie starts without even looking it up, right? But this kind of idea here is that we are also now classics. Like,
We are.
we are old. Which we knew. So thank you for sharing.
Well, I mean,
Confirming.
I don't know. I don't know about you, but I am aging like a fine wine. WHINE.
Yeah, there you go. Me too. I guess that's better than aging like a fine cheese where you're moldy and smelly.
Yeah, that's true. Or like a cheap beer
That's true.
or Old Boone's Farm.
Ooh, does that ever really age though? Boone's Farm. You can still get Boone's Farm, can't you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've never known anybody to keep a Boone's Farm long enough to see how well it does age.
Well, that's the point. I mean, the people who buy it cannot afford to buy anything better. And I'm saying this as someone who bought a fair amount of Boone's Farm in my day. So, like, that's all I could afford back then. Its purpose was not to enjoy later. Its purpose was to get you drunk, right? Like, you didn't,
Really
you weren't,
quickly. Yeah.
yeah, you weren't saving it for a special occasion because it wasn't special enough for that. It was just like, we're tired, we're poor, let's drink it.
Yeah, that's about right. So, but yeah, so no, I was proud of little T. She watched Gremlins. So
How did she
Gremlins has
get it?
now they streamed it because her boyfriend was like, "Oh, you need to watch Gremlins," and so they streamed it.
Okay.
So, which I
We had
think
that
brings
on
up,
VHS.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, the first time I watched it was on VHS.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Went to the video store and rented it.
Do you ever do
Yeah.
you ever tell her stories about your adventures going to the video store? Do they
I
even know
have
what we're
not.
talking about?
I have not. Um, I traumatized her enough just by, again, like not knowing how to do a selfie properly, um, thinking she has to explain Trevor Noah to me. Um,
I
she
feel
does
like
not.
that's a little bit of an indictment on the generation, though, isn't it? That they have to, that they feel sort of traumatized by the fact that they have to teach us how to do selfies.
Well, yes and no, but I mean, I think back to like, I mean, I remember years ago, probably, good 10, 15 years ago, got a new phone, didn't know how to use it, handed it over to my 12-year-old nephew, and he showed it to me. I guess that, yeah, it's just that divide.
Right.
Whereas, there were things that I had to show my mom or my grandparents, um, how to do things with tech. So I think that's just kind of like the march of time.
Yeah.
Um, because I know there were a lot of things that I did where it's like, or like I would have to explain and it'd be like, ugh. But now my time has come where it's like, yeah, I'm not quite sure. Or like how I learned to use the QR code
Mhm,
on my phone. A couple of years ago, I was at a Pride event and this nice young man, he showed me how to do it on my phone.
mhm.
He's like, "Here, I'll show you, ma'am." And I'm like, I was already of the age where it's like, I'm okay being called ma'am.
There was a point at which that would have upset us greatly.
Exactly. But I'm like, it was more important for me to have somebody show me how to use the QR code. Yeah.
Fair.
That was my pride was superseded by my need to know. Um, But I think about that. And I mean, yeah, there's some annoyance with it when you're the one having to explain things. But
Sure.
it also is that whole whoever has the knowledge has the power, right? So
Yes.
they're gonna share with us what they choose to share. They get to
And
decide how well they explain.
and we're
They get
grateful.
the okay.
Oh god. So you should
There's
have told you, I mean, like, she got to experience Gremlins, apparently
yeah,
a classic movie, on a streaming service. We got to
yes.
experience it either in a theater
Hmm.
or in, or either renting it probably from a video store.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
people really go to theaters much anymore? Is that a thing? Like, we've also seen this massive evolution in technology with relation to how we consume video media, movie media, right?
Y- you
People
know,
go to movies much anymore? I mean, like, growing up, I don't know, because we grew up in very small areas. Like, there was a tiny little theater in the town, maybe 10 or 15 miles from us. They had, I mean, there was one north of us and one south of us, and they're both about 10 or 15 miles away, and they both had one screen, and they showed
Mhm.
movies like once or twice a month if they were lucky, if they could get the movie, right? Like, that was hard enough to do in rural North Dakota. Or we had to drive 50 miles away to a slightly bigger city that had like a community college in it, and they would have a 5 or 6 screen movie
Did,
theater.
did you find too, like in that, because my hometown did not always have a movie theater.
And mine never
There were
did.
times where we had one and where we didn't.
Yeah.
And for a while there, we even had two screens. But the
Wow.
big thing was, and what was so annoying was that by the time a movie would get to our town, it was either the week before or the week of it being released on VHS.
That sounds about right.
So so if we wanted to see some, and this was back when movies ran for like 6 months, 8 months.
Yeah.
You don't see that anymore. So if we wanted to see a movie, like, not on opening weekend because that was the logistics never worked. But if you wanted to see a movie when it first came out, we'd have to get in the car and drive 70 miles and go
We
to
would
a
too.
multiplex. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, so sometimes we had a movie theater, sometimes we didn't. But yeah, for if you wanted to see anything timely and cool, you had to get in the car and go somewhere else. We did though, and this is way, way back. We did have an old, oh, and it was gorgeous, from a movie theater that was originally like a theater with the
Mhm,
old stage and everything. Still had the red velvet curtains and everything else.
mhm.
And it did not have air conditioning. So we actually had a drive-in
Oh,
in my hometown. And I remember going to the drive-in. As a matter of fact, I remember 2 movies from going to the drive-in. Because, back then, those old buildings, they didn't have air conditioning, so they used the drive-ins over summer.
yeah.
And so I saw, and I'll see if you know either one of these movies. And for anybody who's listening, you may or may not remember them because they're pretty obscure. One was called Under the Rainbow. And no, it's not porn. It has Chevy Chase in it. And the other one is The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia. I
That
remember
one I
seeing
know.
that one,
Yeah.
who I believe the woman, Vicki Lawrence, who used to play Mama and Mama's Family. I know she sang the song and she may have written it too. Because I
We used to
think it
watch
was
Mama's Family.
Roland. We did too. Because I think it was a song and then the movie, or she sang the song for the movie. I don't know. But anyway, that's how old um, that is. And I remember there was like a swing set and some swings and a teeter-totter and stuff. And I remember asking my mom if we could go play. She said, those aren't real.
Oh god.
So, because she didn't want us to get out of the car and play on the playground equipment. She's like, that's not real. The swings, those aren't real. That seesaw, not real.
We did not host the drive-in. I know some people had, I mean, I know there were some, but I don't think I've ever seen a movie at a drive-in. Not that I recall anyway. Um, we very rarely went to a movie at one of the little one-screen theaters near us,
Yeah.
mostly because for the same reason that you're saying, right? They were not open very often. By the time a movie would come to one of those little towns, it would be almost ready to release on VHS, and so then you could buy it or rent it somewhere. We did not have, well, we had to drive all the way to Fargo, which was 90 miles away, right? If we wanted to go to a
Mhm.
multiplex and see a movie. And this just wasn't a thing that we would do. My parents were not really big into, we would maybe, I can remember 2 or 3 movies we went to as kids. We did do more movies as like, I remember when, this is also a classic for little T, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. When Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure came out, it
Mhm.
came to the movie theater in the town near us. And I remember my friend's mom planned his birthday party and we took us all in her big old Suburban, you know, be, before we all had to wear seatbelts and stuff, up to the movie theater in little tiny
Mhm.
Lisbon. And, that was that. So, and then at some point people started actually renovating those small town movie theaters in our area, and they did a
Yeah.
fantastic job. They were beautiful. I mean, because they were really old buildings, and they did a great job renovating them, but it's still very hard to get movies in a lot of those places.
Mhm.
At least it was when we were kids. Anyway, so
Mhm.
you'd have to go all the way to Fargo, and like you weren't gonna go to Fargo unless you had to go to Fargo,
Right.
right? Like it wasn't a thing like my parents were gonna do when we were teenagers and we
Mhm.
had a job and we were making our own money. if we wanted to go and like go out with some friends and watch a movie, we could do, that was a thing we could do once in a while. But
But
the other
but
thing
as
we,
a
no,
yeah,
not
but as
growing
a
up,
kid, yeah.
nobody's
Yeah, my
spending the
mom
gas
neither.
money to drive to an, north to see a movie and then driving north home. Like teenagers did dumb things like that, but like adults generally didn't. Um,
Mhm.
we did not have video. Like, did you have a Blockbuster in your town
No,
ever? Yeah, we didn't
no.
either.
You know, I was just thinking, like, even with the movie theater, I remember my mom taking us to the movie theater when we were young to see Disney movies. And the reason for that was, and for that splurge was that used to be, um, that was way before the Disney Channel,
Sure.
and Disney would not release their movies on VHS or anything like that. So, like, if you wanted to see a Disney movie, they would re-release them every so often,
Mhm.
and then you had like one chance to go see it.
Mhm.
So, mom did take us to the movies, and I remember we'd go quite often with like one of my aunts and my cousins. But I was just thinking about that. I'm like, why did mom always take us to Disney? It's like, because that was the only way we ever got to see Disney
Fair.
back then. Whereas now everything is so inundated with Disney.
Mhm.
But back then, yeah, like if you wanted to see Snow White, yeah, best
Go see it.
attend while it was, yeah, because then they would seal it in that, what do they call it? The vault,
Mhm.
you know? Because as a matter of fact, I saw, and I don't think anybody can watch this anymore. I remember watching Song of the South.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
in the
I
theater.
remember watching that in a theater. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like probably 81.
Wow. You were 4,
Yeah, I was 4 or 5.
maybe 5.
I remember movies that I watched. Yeah.
So, I mean, growing up when we had movies, like
Or
it was that we had to go to a theater
yeah.
and see them. There was a point when cable started doing some movies, right? You'd have
Mhm.
HBO, Showtime, or whatever. We did not generally have cable. I know I've told this story in the past, right? My aunt would record movies from her HBO
Mhm.
onto VHS, and she'd choose the setting that would allow her to record like 8 hours worth of movies on one VHS cassette. And then we basically just have these movies on tape we could watch because we did not have those for the longest time a way to rent a video. And
Mhm.
then strangely enough, the grocery store in our tiny little town started offering video rentals, and they didn't have a
Mhm.
massive selection, right? They maybe had 30, 40 movies if they were lucky, and they were mostly older ones. And then as we got closer to high school, well, the gas station also started offering, right, some video rentals.
Mhm.
Otherwise, like we borrowed tapes from friends because everybody would record something a little bit different. We all got really good at learning how to set our VCRs, which are probably things
Mhm.
Generation B and Generation Alpha, and maybe even some millennials don't remember because VCRs haven't necessarily been a thing for a long time, but you'd get a VCR. I remember going to college and being like, I had to have a TV and a VCR for my room because you couldn't watch movies without a VCR, right? And that's, the thing then was
Right.
buying VHS tapes.
Do you remember, because my mom really took advantage of this, back when like NBC, CBS, ABC, when they would do like Sunday night movies and they would show censored versions
Yep.
of theatrical films. So like I remember like yearly they would show like The Godfather and it would be like in 2 parts. And yearly they would show Sound of Music
Yeah.
and The Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind. And I cannot think of how many movies I first watched on broadcast TV
Mhm.
that later on I watched them and went, wow, things were really
They
like,
were.
I didn't realize this was
Yeah.
part of the but, I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, like I'm thinking back, how many movies did I see that were just on broadcast TV
Mhm.
that I never rented or have never seen, like, on streaming or HBO or anything like that? Because basic cable often showed, you know, and a lot of those were events. See, like, whenever they aired Star Wars, because they used to air Star Wars, what, about once a year or so? And I mean, it was always a big, big deal,
Yeah.
that you're gonna be home and you're gonna watch Star Wars.
Yep.
Because even when we had like, I remember when VHS tapes came out, finally, like, came to our area, it was very expensive to rent the VCR, to get the tapes,
Oh, yeah,
and
you
all
could rent the
that.
VCR, I
So
forgot about that.
so even when, because I remember my mom renting a VCR a few times, but I remember it being a big deal. Like, she saved up for
Mhm.
it, and it was like an event.
Mhm.
We're gonna go get the VCR, and then we're gonna go get the tapes. And back then, it probably still cost her like 25, $30 in the '80s. So, I mean, she did have to save up for it.
Mhm.
Because I remember one time she had a week off, and that was our vacation, was we watched National Lampoon's Vacation.
There you go.
But,
I had forgotten
um,
you could rent a VCR, and now that
yeah,
you say it, I'm like, they were the size of a small suitcase.
they were.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, and then it went to where, yeah, then, more people could afford VCRs. I remember our first VCR, mom put it on layaway.
Mm.
And so, like, for 6 months, we're, like, waiting for mom to pay off our VCR from Santa. Um,
Yeah.
and it was special, like, that was the gift that year. But, and then we all started, then we immediately just jumped into, helping make all the bootleg VHS and keep that underground. Yeah.
Yeah, we used a lot of recording, and then I remember we had a friend who had a double-headed VCR, right? It had 2 slots, so she could
Oh, yeah.
they could tape we could watch a movie and record the movie on a blank VHS at the same time, so then we could take the VHS home and have it ourselves. And
Kinda
so we
kinda
watched a
like what
lot of those movies.
kinda like what we could do with cassettes.
Exactly what we did with cassettes. Yep.
Yeah.
We did a lot of that.
So
We did never get I mean, we were never gonna get Blockbuster. I don't know if I even used a Blockbuster until I was in
oh, I
undergrad.
was in col yeah, I was in college.
There used
And
to
then I
be that
thought,
one not far from campus, if you remember, there was that
yeah.
in Saddle Creek. Um, so we used to go there and we get, do that. And then as VHS slowly movies started coming out on DVD, right? So a little bit like we saw the progression in music from cassettes to CD. We saw the same sort of progression from VHS cassettes into DVD. And then a
Mhm.
little bit later, DVD became Blu-ray. And I never really understood
I
the
don't think
Blu-ray piece of
Blu-ray
it.
yeah, and I don't think Blu-ray really caught on. Like, I remember it would be, like, available on DVD and Blu-ray.
Yeah, right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
So you could
which
then the video store started changing over, right? From VHS, they would offer side by side CD or
Mhm.
DVD. And then at some point, the VHS started going away. Do you remember the Be Kind Rewind everywhere? We always had
Oh,
to,
yeah.
you had to have
Yeah.
we actually had this little contraption. I don't know where, must got at Radio Shack or something. That its only job was to rewind our cassette tapes.
Yeah,
And
we had
then,
one too.
you take them back. And if you didn't rewind your cassette tape or your VHS, Blockbuster would charge you a rewind fee. And so
Well,
then you'd have to pay that.
and not even just Blockbuster, but even the local little shops.
Yeah, for
would.
sure.
Everybody would. Yeah.
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 Rewind their
Not
stupid
just,
tape, right? Which thankfully then when DVDs became a thing, nobody had to think about it because you don't rewind a DVD. But uh, we got the DVDs, then we got the Blu-ray, which again, just I never bought a Blu-ray just to buy a Blu-ray, but I had
yeah.
for a long time we had a DVD VCR player, right, where we could watch either. My parents had one, which was fun. Um, we had
Would you would you believe we never bought a DVD player? My mom had one. My sister inherited it. My husband and I, we never had a DVD player. But my husband is also a Luddite, so there
fair.
we go.
Fair.
Yeah.
We still have one, it's in the closet because we still have kinda like we had with CDs, right? We have this massive collection of DVDs and don't really know what to do with them. Like, we
Yeah.
don't have to watch them anymore because we can
Well,
stream it, but we don't
and
wanna get rid of them because they were way more expensive than buying a CD for music necessarily.
I think too for us, like about the time that DVDs were um very big and were coming out, we actually had a really good package on cable.
Yeah.
And so it was, I remember we were talking like, should we get a DVD player? It's like, no, because at that time, like on a Saturday evening, we had Stars, Cinemax, HBO, Showtime, the movie channel, how many others. And
Yeah.
so it was like we had on Saturday night, instead of going out to, or buying a DVD or renting one, it's like we already have like 8 new movies.
Mhm.
And then by that time, too, pay per view on demand
Yeah, I remember
was
those. We still kind of have
also,
that a little bit.
yeah. But I mean, I remember quite often it's like if we wanted to see something brand new, um, we would just do the pay per view. And quite often I remember we used to get like little coupons.
Mhm.
So like we'd end up with like one free pay per view a month. So
And that kind of stuff was cheaper because you could have a bunch of people over. Right? Like,
yeah,
or you even if it was just you and your husband, wife, significant other,
yeah,
whatever, 2 of you going to the theater has
yeah.
gotten fantastically expensive compared to, like, just
Or
let me buy the stupid movie and then I can watch it at home as much as I want.
or even just think of the time spent going to Blockbuster,
Yeah.
getting in the car, going to Blockbuster, blah, blah, blah. And then, yeah. And then it was always like an automatic, 48 hour, 72-hour rental. And it cost the same as and it was guaranteed. Whereas when you went to Blockbuster,
You didn't know
it
what you'd
wasn't,
get.
you didn't know what you'd get. I mean, I remember, what were we trying to watch? Oh, Showgirls of all movies.
Yeah.
Um, and like we were driving all over frickin' Omaha.
Trying to
And
find
at
a
that time they were
Blockbuster
like,
that had it.
and- yeah. And because we weren't the only pervs. We never did find it because all the other perverts in town were renting it and were on the wait list. So, yeah, after a while, it's like that convenience always wins out, right?
Mhm.
Do we feel like getting dressed and going out to Blockbuster and maybe deciding on a movie, or should we just scroll through and see what's on cable or see what we can get on demand?
Which is, I mean, and then at some point we had the advent of Netflix, right? Which was no VHS. That was after VHS, but you would get DVDs, Blockbuster sort of style, sent to you in the mail, and you'd send them back.
Mhm.
Which I did that for quite a while when it first came out, and then they slowly started transitioning to kind of a blend of DVD via
And
mail and just flat
mhm.
out streaming, and now they only do streaming.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's any on demand really with Netflix, but like we also have Amazon Prime. So
But that
we
is that is on demand, though. I mean, streaming is on demand, right? You're thinking like
oh yeah, I'm
pay-per-view.
I'm thinking pay-per-view, yeah.
Yeah.
Because like you can watch anything that's on Netflix, you don't pay any extra for it. Now
Right.
we have Prime Video as part of our Amazon Prime package. And some
Yeah.
things are included, they're part of the deal, and other things you pay for sort of like
Right.
pay-per-view. And we've
Yeah.
done that a few times where it's like 349 or,
Mhm.
249 or whatever the heck. And like those things are sort of like no-brainers because you couldn't leave the apartment or the house and go to a movie for 249 for like you can't even get a small bucket of popcorn for that or something else, right? Like you can't and
Mhm.
you're gonna spend the last time I was actually in a movie theater was probably, I don't know, 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, was I think it was the new, Top Gun movie, this last Top Gun movie that came out, and I just remember going in with the girls that I had gone to high school with, and we went in to watch this movie, and it was I think it cost me 14 or $15 just for me to get into the movie, and I thought,
Yeah.
"I don't need to see Tom Cruise that bad." Like, I'm gonna go because 'cause we're all gonna go, but, like, holy crap, that's expensive for a movie. And then even just looking at the stuff that was for like candy and that stuff's always expensive. Like it always has been. That's not
True.
news. But like just for me to get like something like a bottle of water and some dots or something, right, was still gonna cost me 25 bucks. I'm like, I could just go buy the movie for 25 bucks, right?
Mhm.
And worry about it. And now if I want to watch it, I can watch it for $3 or $4 and I have to leave my couch. I can eat
Mhm.
whatever's in my fridge or I can go puff something, right? Like there's other options, but I'm surprised that there are movie theaters still in existence. But we've kind of also seen
Well,
this evolution where now we can just press a
I
button and
I
watch it on our TV or our
I
phone.
think
You can watch
though,
it on your phone too, right?
yeah, I think though our rural roots are showing because it was so logistically and practically difficult for us to watch movies as they came out, as they, uh, when they were timely and everything else. I think for us, I mean, what I'm sensing with you and I, it's sort of like I was so used to having to wait for up to a year to 2 years to watch a movie that I really, really wanted to watch as a
Yeah.
child. As
Yeah.
an adult now, I can wait forever. Like there is nothing. Whereas I know a lot of people who they go every weekend and just watch whatever look they think looks good that weekend. But by God, it's Saturday and they're going to go. But
Mhm.
they've always been city people
Yeah.
with that ready access that they've been doing, they were doing that with their parents as kids growing up and da da da. Whereas for you and I think our approach is a bit different
Yeah.
because, as you mentioned earlier, and it's true for my mom, like, we're not getting in the car and driving 90 miles to watch a stupid movie when it's going to be on video or on cable or on TV within the next year. Like, no, we're not wasting an entire day
Right. I
doing that
mean,
because it would be a day.
it
It
would
would be.
be. It would
Yeah.
be. It would have been. And I
So,
mean, I have a friend here who does the same, like a little bit like we were talking about.
yeah.
He has a movie pass, I think he
Yeah.
calls it,
Yep.
to the AMC theaters and goes at least, 3, 4 times a month to go see whatever's in the theater.
Mhm.
Um, but city kid, right? Like, I mean, not a kid, he's
Right.
40 something.
Right.
But
But
yeah.
his formative years were very different.
Well, yeah,
Yeah. As
yeah.
far as movie
For
going
for me, I'm
go.
like, I don't care how much that movie is. I don't wanna watch anything badly enough that I'm gonna go deal with the people, right? I'm not gonna go
Yeah.
like, when we would go to movies in Omaha when we lived in Omaha, and we never my team went to one movie the entire time we lived in Omaha. Um, it was Despicable Me something or another. I don't remember which one, but, like, he wanted to go see that, so we did see that. But, like, otherwise, we very like, when we would go, usually the place we would go when I was in school and when I was working before I I moved away for a bit was to the big one, the big AMC 24 or whatever the heck it was down by Oakview. We'd go to
Yeah.
that one. That would be the most common place to go. So you'd have to go, you'd have to park. If it was colder than, I mean, like if it was winter, people still went, right? But so you have to park,
Mhm.
be cold, find your way into the movie theater, deal with all the people, stand in line, get your ticket, deal with all the other people inside who you need to stand in line for, get whatever you wanted to eat or drink, and then go wait in line to get into the actual theater area, watch your movie, fight with everybody to get out. Like it was a couple hour experience. It wasn't
Right.
just you watched a 90-minute or a 115-minute or whatever movie. You needed at least a half hour to 45 minutes before the movie started. You needed to be like at the theater, getting your ticket, getting yourself ready and seated. And then you'd have this other half hour buffer afterwards. So you're talking about a 4-hour window basically to go to a movie.
Mhm.
Like, that doesn't
Well,
appeal to me in a city this size because you have to either drive and find a place to park, which is not an easy thing to do, or you have to take transit, which is cheap but annoying, right? You've had plenty of fun experiences on our red line. Um, and then you have to go to this movie. Like, that doesn't sound like fun to me. I am perfectly fine waiting until it's on my Netflix or my Prime or whatever other pay per view on demand kind of option I can get because it's always less expensive and it's way more comfortable to just do it here.
well, and I think that's part too, and this might be because not beyond even where we grew up, but how we grew up, where it's
Yes.
like when it comes to entertainment, you do go with the cheapest option,
Yes.
you know?
Because for all of us,
Because
it was a luxury,
right, it was a
right?
luxury. It was a
Yeah.
special treat. And my husband, I mean, like, yeah, when I was in high school and I had my own wheels and I had my own money, I saw a lot of movies and I would go out with my friends and we would see a movie almost every weekend because we would do the same thing you did. We'd either go 20 miles to the nearest movie theater or we'd go 70 miles to the multiplex,
Yeah.
as rural teenagers do. But I mean, even like for my husband and I, we would, it would have to be something very special that we both wanted to watch. And
Yeah.
it usually happened along the lines of like a wedding anniversary or something special like that. But I think even like, cause for years, near my neighborhood, we even had the discount, the cheap movie theater. And
Yeah.
I don't know how many times we would drive by or walk by and go, "Yeah, we ain't paying 250 for any of this."
Right.
But at that time, I mean, we had the full cable suite, so we're like, it'll,
We're good.
it'll be on cable here soon enough. There's nothing bad enough that we want to see.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, I don't know about you, but I'm always so excited when I see a movie that I've always wanted to see on when we had cable or now on streaming.
Mhm.
And it'll be like, oh, I have wanted to see this movie for 30 years and now I actually get to see it. So, yeah,
And it is now considered a classic, probably.
yeah, yeah. I'm sure it is. If I was waiting 30 years.
I mean, I think it's just got to be a different experience for our Generation Z, even probably a lot of our millennials than what we had. Because right, they've had the option to stream things pretty
Mhm.
much their entire lives, and we definitely did not. Like movies were not as simple as I can. I mean, I can just open up my Netflix app on my phone and watch anything I want anywhere I want. Right?
Yeah.
Like that's the way it works now. We have that nice little ability. Whereas growing up for us, like it was a thing. Like you had to plan it, you had to organize it, you had to execute it, like you had to be able to afford it, right? Like there wasn't any of this just touch and go stuff, right?
You
Like, oh, I want
you
to
had
watch
to
this movie. Here we
coordinate
go.
you had to coordinate schedules and
Yeah.
yeah,
You had to like find
yeah.
out there wasn't an internet either where you could look up the times of the theater. You
And
call
and
the
for a
AM.
long time for a long time, they didn't even have the call. The movie phone didn't
Right.
exist. Or if it did, it sure as hell didn't in a rural community or semi-rural community. So, yeah, then
No.
you had to find a paper.
Right. We had to look at newspapers in our small towns to understand what the movie theater schedule was. Right. That's not a thing people do anymore.
Or if you
So,
wanted to go to Fargo or I wanted to go to Salina, then you'd have to find the Fargo paper or the Salina paper.
mhm.
And then, yeah, it was a lot of work.
It
And so,
was. And now it's not.
and like when I was 17, I had energy for that. At 48, I'm like, huh. So, talking about things like last night, I decided I was going to watch a movie.
Mhm.
And I'm, for whatever reason, my Netflix algorithm is telling me I like old people movies now. And by that, I mean like movies about old people.
Okay.
But I did see a very cute movie and it was called, and I'm sitting there the whole time just going, oh my God, these people are old. And so, like, then I'm looking on IMDb. So, the days of sitting there going, who's that actor? Who's that
Mhm.
actress? Or what else have we seen? That's long gone because you got IMDb to look up. But it had Ellen Burstyn and James Caan
Mhm.
or Can. Can.
Mhm.
I never did know.
I don't. Yeah, I don't remember how to
And
say his
he's
name either.
and he's dead now.
Right.
Um, and she's like 90. So I was like, well, how old is she? She's about 90. And Margaret is in it.
Oh,
He's-
the last thing I saw her in was Grumpy Old Men,
And oh, she
which
was
would
no,
now
it
be considered a classic, apparently.
would be now. And Loretta Devine. And I was like, Loretta Devine is not old enough to play a woman in a retirement community. Yes, she is.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was cute. But I mean, it's kind of sad in
Hmm.
a way when you're talking about movies, no matter what the medium. But um, yeah, James Caan will always be Danny Corleone to
Hmm.
me from The God, and what he was probably like 30 when he was in that. And so I'm like, this old man who sounds like James Caan. He sounds like Sonny Corleone. Who is he?
I mean,
But
it's like when you gave me those movies. I don't even remember how long ago, 10, 12 years ago. You gave me Taxi Driver, right? Is
for
that
a
what it's called?
taxi driver, oh yeah, with Robert De Niro,
With
yeah.
Robert De Niro, and like I hadn't seen him in a movie that young when he was that young, and I
Oh
just
yeah.
remember being like, "Holy crap!" Right? Those would
Oh,
strike me as eligible for the label classic before Gremlins or some of the other ones, but I understand now that we have
it's
shifted the definitions or the time frame.
well, I mean, they're all classics. If you want your mind blown, like I think it's been a long time since I've watched The Godfather, but like to see Al Pacino and Diane Keaton and
Mhm.
even Marlon Brando, who I thought was so old, was probably about our age when he filmed it.
Okay.
Because they actually made him look older. He wasn't as old as the character he was playing, so he was only like right around 50. That's trippy. But it is sad to see. I mean, granted, now like and Margaret to me was always old, because she was more in the 60s. I always
Yeah.
think she was in that starred with Elvis a few times, did she? Was she in
I
Viva
think
Las
so.
Vegas?
I
But
thought so.
um, it's just like I saw a couple weeks ago a video of Harrison Ford, and he was doing something. I can't remember if he was receiving an award or giving a presentation or what. And she looked like somebody's grandpa, which
Yeah.
he is.
Yeah.
But I mean, but he looks so old and so frail, eh?
I
And
know.
it's and it's that whole but then you start doing the math. And
And you realize in not very many handfuls of years, we're going to be looking like that too.
but
Don't choke on your gum.
it's kind of hard to see your uh movie idols grow old. And even the ones who were older still um either die or um yeah, or like they're up there. Because I didn't even know if Aunt Margaret was still alive. She still is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, she's like 90, but she's alive. Ellen Burstyn is still alive. She's
Hmm.
like 90. Um, but and then I felt bad because a little while back I watched Mr. Mom
Hmm.
again. And then the next day Terry Garr died. So then for a while I was trying to stay away from old movies because I spend my time going, who's dead, who's alive? And then too many times like one of the stars, their obituary shows up. I was like, oh man, I watched Mr. Mom one more time and I killed Terry Garr. But it is sad with each rewatch of some of these movies. It's like, now one more person has died. And maybe that's how we define classics. Like maybe the cutoff is when half the cast is dead. It just becomes a classic movie.
I mean, I suppose that would work. That's kind of sad though.
It is sad.
I don't know what it was yesterday, and it was a very quick clip of, um, ugh, I can't remember their names. The two of the guys on Ghostbusters.
Like Dan Aykroyd.
No, it wasn't him.
Uh,
It was the other two guys. Um,
um, oh crap.
was it a Belushi? Was there a Belushi
In
on?
that there were no Belushis and
Who's that dude? Who's that? I mean, I've seen him on so many
it
things, I can't
was
remember his name. Um, but I saw them both
and
on there, and I don't remember what the clip was even from, but I just remember looking at them
you're
thinking,
not
"Oh
thinking
god.
you're not thinking Bill Murray.
Oh, no. Maybe?
You're not or
Oh, I
are
am
you not
thinking Bill Murray. That's exactly who I'm thinking. I just forgot his name. I was like, he didn't yeah, whatever. I mean, I saw them, him and the guy I think that played Venkman, and I kept thinking, "Dear God, they look old." I mean, like, they look like the two of them, the setting of this clip would have been when they were young, right?
Yeah,
Younger than Ghostbusters. So, like, I don't even know if those I'm sure Bill Murray's probably still alive, but I don't know if the other guy is.
he
Um,
is alive. I think everybody's alive, except for Harold Ramis, who played Egon. He passed away,
oh,
but
okay.
everybody else from Ghostbusters, I think, is still alive.
Yeah, so Harold Ramis was one of the guys on the clip. It was Harold Ramis and Bill Murray that were on this clip, and I do not know where it came from. The scene was somebody asking them if they were homosexuals, and the answer they gave was, "We could learn to be. We're not, but we could learn,"
Um,
something like that.
I think you're maybe thinking of the movie Stripes.
Could be.
That might
It
have been a clip from Stripes.
yeah.
Which, yeah, they would have been babies because that came out like in 80 or 81.
Yeah, so a couple years before Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Ghostbusters was 84,
Yeah.
85. And I just remember thinking,
Yeah.
"Holy crap, they were adults then." Right?
Mhm.
We were barely old enough to remember them, and how old are they now? I had to look it up, and I was just like, "I can't." I don't even wanna think about it.
Uh,
So that would also be a classic, right? Like, that movie,
yeah. Another person who was in this movie was Jane Curtin.
Hmm.
And I think she's the one that kind of blew my mind because I remember always watching Kate and Hallie and watching the
Yeah,
old Saturday Night Live because she was like part of the original cast.
right.
Because there was always that, what was it? The Jane, you ignorant slut or something, which is just horrible.
Yeah.
This is why we have the sense of humor that we do.
Oh, I mean, of
Yeah.
course.
But to see her, and I know she was like in Third Rock from the Sun, but that's already been years ago. But to see her play a little old lady,
Hmm.
and then again,
Unsettling. Yeah.
I'm scrolling through IMDb. She was born in 1949
So
or
she's younger.
1947.
Yeah. So she's younger than the Clintons and the Bushes.
She, which is a whole other conversation. But then, no wonder then it's a shock to the system because she would have been in her mid to late 30s
Yeah.
playing Kate, in Kate and Allie, in her mid to late 40s in Third Rock from the Sun, and in her mid to late 20s on Saturday Night Live. So
Hmm.
now here she is playing a woman in a retirement home. It's like, there's no way. Yeah, she
I
really,
mean,
really
I'm
is that.
saying we are roughly four handfuls of years away from a retirement home ourselves? Probably
Oh
less.
my gosh. Okay. So when I was with little T the other day, we played lawn Jenga.
Hmm.
Okay. And I've never played Jenga before. I'm not going to do it again because the stress factor is so high. So
Right.
anyway, there's a lot of people around and little T, bless her, she's starting to take bets. So see, there are some shade. I'm rubbing off on her. She's starting
Okay.
to take bets. Who's going to win? So she's asking all these people around, but she goes, "Is it going to be the young lady or?" And I thought, "I'm going to pop you," but she goes, "The experienced lady."
So she's learning.
She's learning. And I like that, the experienced lady.
So we should just call them movies for experienced folks
I don't
instead
know.
of classics. Classic just makes me
Yeah, yeah. And instead of us being middle aged, we're experienced.
We are, which is why we don't mess with going to theater because we have more
Yeah.
experience.
We have more experience and like my patience is like -5. So
Right.
and I did try to Google like who, like what are the movie going numbers now? But I think everything is so skewed numbers wise because the price of tickets, and then a lot of times, now they're simultaneously releasing in theater and streaming. And
Yeah.
I, I really couldn't find a quick response to
I
like,
wouldn't be
what percentage.
surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if
Yeah.
over the next decade that there just are theaters continue to die out.
Yeah. Well,
Because
yeah,
they're
because these
releasing more
youngins,
and more, right? Like they're releasing them more often streaming. You can pay to get them streaming.
or cuts.
I
Oh,
They're gonna monetize that in a different way and they're just gonna be done with these buildings.
well, and then somebody younger than us is going to give us little chips
Hmm.
to put in our heads that it'll be like, okay, T wants to watch. And then I'll just pull up and I'll play in my head.
That'll work. What's gonna happen is movie theaters are gonna become vintage, right? They're going to be a vintage experience where you go to experience things like the old times. And people will do it as sort of a touristy
Like
kind
a,
of thing.
like a pioneer village.
Yes, that's what they're gonna be. I bet you money that's what's gonna happen. Um, in the meantime, we're all gonna just keep streaming because it's convenient and that's the interesting thing of right. That's the fun, I guess, about having all of this evolution of technology during our lifetimes is we've gone from the most like just the phones, right?
Right.
Completely convenient the music from being clunky and big and difficult and now being touch of a button. Movies the
Yeah.
same way, right? Like, we've seen just this constant evolution, even just in how we even use our computers, right? From before the old Commodore 64 being this massive technological achievement to being us being able to record simultaneously on podcast software and then people actually listening to us right on YouTube, right? Like, we have seen some shit in the last, four handfuls of years because we have been fortunate enough to be here for
Hold
it.
on a second. I'm trying to do math. Yeah, you're right. Almost five full
Yeah.
handfuls.
Yeah. I
So
mean, I think that's kind of cool. It's fun,
it
right?
is.
We've done it.
You
And
know,
now we can choose all the convenient options we want to. And we don't have because we can look back at it and go, this used to be a big deal. You guys look at going to movies as this thing where you just, you all get together. It's like people were Zoom watching movies during the pandemic, right? They would just have Zoom parties and they'd watch the same movie and they'd share screen or do whatever. And you can do
yeah.
all that crap now. Whereas we had to plan actual house parties and people would come over and you'd have food and you'd do whatever and you'd watch a movie. Like, people would do that for dates or date night or whatever it was. And now you don't have to put in all that work because you can just click the button and it's done. And we can sit back and go, back in the classical times, you had to really want it bad. You knew you wanted that movie because you saved for it. You drove 2 hours for it. You did all that
Back in the
crap
last century.
back in the last century. It's kind of fun.
Back in the last century.
Well, that's kind of a good place to also leave this one. Do you have anything else you feel like
Yeah.
you throw out there about it?
No, I just think it'll be exciting to see what comes next with all of this technology.
Yeah.
I was thinking earlier, like, never in a million years, if somebody would have told me even 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 5 years ago, that like you're going to someday have a podcast with a friend in a different city and state, and then you're going to post it on this thing called YouTube, and you're going to have four handfuls and a middle finger worth of episodes and a whole handful and maybe a couple of fingers of another of viewers,
Yeah. Who knew? We
right?
would not have believed
Two
it.
handfuls. I can't do math.
It's fine.
Two handfuls. I said four handfuls. Two, whatever. We're
You got
doing this, right? So
perfectly good. Awesome.
yeah. So who knows what new tech we'll adopt in 10 years or 20 years. And then like by that time T will have a child and I can go to grandbaby T and have them explain it to me.
I may need to borrow them because I may need help with that too. So nice. Well, for all of you listening to us
All
on the final little platform, throw some comments in. Tell us about your first movie experience, where you went, what it was. Do you think it's a classic? Because I mean, we're still choking on that one a little bit. Yeah, throw some of that in the comments. Obviously, a like and subscribe, share with some of your friends, as many handfuls of friends as you can. And as always, check back with us next week for something new to complete. T, any last words?
Nope. I think I'm good. So everybody just be good and we will see you next week.
Fantastic. Later, everyone.